Hey everyone, welcome to Political Radar Echo, 30 minutes of political talk about current topics with panelists from a variety of viewpoints. I'm your host, Cassandra Hautala, and this week we are talking about the national anthem, the NFL, and Trump.
This is Political Radar Echo with Cassandra Hautala, where we cover many political issues affecting our country with a panel of guests from many viewpoints.
Before we get started, we put out new videos about once a week. So if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. My panelists this week are Noah Reif and Kyle Cropsey. Noah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Well, like Cassandra mentioned, my name is Noah Reif. I'm a progressive. I'm a Democrat. I ran for state assembly in the 88th last year in 2016 against John Mocco. Obviously, I did not win because I'm here today, but it's a great pleasure to be back. And currently, I serve on the Administrative Council of the Brown County Democrats, and I do some activist work in the area for BLU and for Citizen Action. So,
okay, Kyle.
My name is Kyle Cropsey. I'm a small business owner. I do film and photography. I've been doing it for about 3 years now. Cropsey Productions LLC. I guess I'm an independent conservative. I was very active in the 2016 campaign season, went to a bunch of Trump rallies. I was on the Sean Hannity show, so I've had a good time doing politics, and I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. Both of you are return guests or panelists, have been on other shows, the old Political Radar or on Rhonda's show, Political Radar Pulse. So welcome back to both of you.
thank you.
So it was an interesting weekend in the NFL. Most people probably know last year, was it 2016, Colin Kaepernick started taking the knee during the national anthem.
Yes.
It was pretty much a silent protest until somebody took a picture of him, put it on Twitter, and it kind of blew up from there. And he came out and said that he was basically protesting racial inequality, and he couldn't stand for the anthem with all of the things happening in our country. So this was a debate for the past year. Let's fast forward to, was it Friday night? President Trump had a campaign rally, or was it a campaign rally?
Campaign rally in Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay, it was in Alabama. So he said one of the many, many things he said, but he addressed the NFL. He said, and I quote, and I sorry for the language, "Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, 'Get that son of a bitch off the field right now. He is fired. He's fired.'" So
Eloquent as ever.
yes. So that kind of took off from there, with many of the players scrambling, deciding what to do. A lot of them took it very personally. I believe the union got together to discuss what to do. And many of the owners, Roger Goodell, condemned Trump's statement. So many of the owners and commissioner and all of that have supported the players in what happened on Sunday then. Anyone who watched any of the games saw that there were many things that happened. For the most part, all players linked arms on the sidelines. Many sat down here in Green Bay. I am a hardcore Packer fan, so I saw my team linked arms with 3 players sitting. Also, we had 3 teams, I believe, who chose not to take the field. And Kyle said beforehand that was one thing that really bothered you, was teams who chose not to take the field. So that's kind of the brief synopsis of what we're talking about. I'd like to get both of your perspectives on this. So Kyle, why don't you start, since you're at the far seat? Give me your perspective on this.
All right, so last year when it all started, I just thought it was a way for Kaepernick to get some media attention, because he was a backup at the time. Like I said, I disagree with the way he did it, but I also respect that. He's protesting. It's peaceful. It's better than the people going out and destroying their cities. So, I mean, he's donating money. So I've actually over time actually started to be like, Kaepernick, he should have a job in the NFL. So when all these owners are out there saying, oh, we support our players for doing this, well, Kaepernick should have a job then. If they say they support their players, they should support him. So it's kind of hypocritical in a sense that, I don't know, I thought it was pretty hypocritical. But when I started hearing all the full teams not showing up, if you want to kneel and be peaceful about it, but when you don't come up for the whole team, that's pretty disrespectful. And then the one Steelers guy came out and he stood for the anthem, and that showed a lot of courage, being the only player on your team to come out and do it. So I love that. That's a good moment for America right there.
I thought I had read that the Steelers coach had made that decision for the team, that he just didn't want to put them in the political spotlight.
Yep.
And I did see a picture, the one who came out and stood, which that's his right as much as the people who are kneeling. I believe the team was actually further behind him. In the tunnel.
The picture I saw, I didn't see the team.
I can speak a little bit to that. So Andrew Villanueva, who is either the right or the left tackle for the Steelers, he was an Army Ranger. So he's served, and he's like, well, I'm going to go out at the entrance of the tunnel and place my hand over my heart. It's just what I'm going to do because it's what I believe. And Mike Tomlin and I believe it was the offensive and defensive coordinators stood on the sidelines while the rest of the team waited at the entrance of the tunnel. So, and I believe, like you said, Tomlin made the decision to remove his players from any form of we're not going to make this about politics. We're going to make this about unity, and we're going to do it together. And that was kind of his reasoning, if I'm understanding his statements correctly.
Okay. Noah, what are your thoughts on all of this?
I'm going to make 3 super quick points so we can get into the opinions and the dialogue that we're hoping to establish here. First thing, and not from you, Kyle, because you said you recognize the First Amendment right to protest, and it's how free speech is a big tenet of American democracy and democracies around the world. But I've been hearing a lot of this is illegal, this is disrespectful, this is awful, and I would like to point out to the legality of it. It is a completely legal protest. There's precedent. In 1943, there was a Supreme Court case that was concerning standing for the Pledge of Allegiance in public schools, and that was ruled in favor of the defendant, who was the student who was wrongfully, punished for not standing. They were saying you cannot be forced to stand, and to do so is infringing on the constitutional right to protest and express oneself. Second of all, Donald Trump, to this whole, to provide context, Trump has made his bread and butter doing this for the last year and a half, 2 years in his very short political life. He's not what I would call an eloquent speaker, but he's an excellent person when it comes to driving home a sense of what he believes, or he wants the people who support him believe what's wrong. And he's very good at driving wedge issues. And this is a wedge issue because it's putting people on different sides of an issue of something that's extremely important. And it's football on a Sunday in fall in America, which is a huge day. We only have to look at multi-millions of dollars and billions of dollars being dumped into it and the attendance numbers. And it's using something that's very sacred to a lot of Americans, and that's the flag and the national anthem. Now, whether you serve or you have family who served, that's something else that he's using to drive this wedge between people. And it's interesting the timing that he used for this because, like we mentioned earlier, it was at a rally in Huntsville, Alabama, and he was down there stumping for Luther King, who's in a runoff, who's a more, I guess you'd call him Trumpian Republican, rather than the more moderate GOP member who's running down there. And he was, people look at him oh, he's just flying off the handle and making this half-cocked statement. No, Trump, for all of his, what I perceive as failings, he's really smart at knowing how to turn people on and get their buttons pushed. And what he did very well is got his base excited to vote for Luther King and go out for a runoff election. So that's kind of why these, he's been kind of making these comments off and on for a while, but this is my opinion of why he did it. And you look at a lot of political analysts and they agree. He's very good at, galvanizing his base. And the last one is the third reason is I completely support these protests. I agree with their premise, and I think we need to get to a point, and we'll probably have that next, where I do not think this is disrespectful at all, and in fact, I think it's extremely, I think it's necessary, and I think to get the message out of racial inequality, they picked the perfect platform to do so. And it's all about establishing a dialogue in this country about racial inequality, gender inequality, LGBTQ plus inequality. It started as just a Black Lives Matter movement. That sounds like I'm marginalizing it. I'm not, but it's kind of taken on, if you are marginalized in this country, this is your protest. It's kind of put the haves versus the have-nots in a way.
Yeah.
So
there was a soccer player on the U.S. women's team who took
Megan
a knee.
Rapinoe, I believe.
Right.
I probably just butchered her name, but
Yeah, I think you're close. Yeah.
I got the Megan part right. So
Kyle, you've been pretty clear. You were a Trump supporter. You went to rallies and all of that. What are your thoughts on what Trump has said and the divisiveness of that? I'm really surprised to hear you say you do support the First Amendment, because what I've seen online has been people saying, no, you have to stand and you have to support the troops, and what are we fighting for? And my thought is, this is what we're fighting for, the right to have peaceful protest. This isn't something new either. Athletes have used their platform for years to bring awareness and attention to the issues that they face in their everyday life. So what are your thoughts on what President Trump said and how he's handled the whole situation this weekend?
Well, since I'm a pretty big Trump supporter, and I think he says, he knows how to get people riled up. Sometimes I wish he would be a little more careful what he says. I mean, I agree with a lot of what he says, but he just brings, because the media hates him, and they just bring more negative. It just brings more negative attention and takes away from all the, I think, the good he's doing for the country that's going unheard. So, do I wish he'd stay off Twitter and maybe some of that? Yes, but that's who he is, and you're not going to change that. And if that's what's effective, you just gotta go with it, I guess.
But was it effective? What he said, was it effective?
I mean, if you look at the NFL ratings, they're not very good. So people aren't watching the NFL. I know a lot of people yesterday turned the Packer game off. I'm not going to mention who, but people were texting me and saying, go Bengals, or if Aaron Rodgers kneels, I'm going to show up to a Packer game with a Giants jersey with you and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's people out there
What I've seen, though, the NFL's approval ratings are higher than Trump's approval ratings, so...
Doesn't take much. I'm sorry to get that low jabbing, but it's to kind of go off but also to say the NFL approval ratings have been going down over the last year now, and to support your
it's more than it's politics, it's boring games, it's all the new, it's just a bunch of stuff put in, but the politics isn't helping it. That's
right. Well, and for me, I've seen a lot of issues with the NFL that have nothing to do with politics. About the
I'm saying
CTE.
All of it clumped together is just, I mean.
I had a lot of issues when they allowed Michael Vick to play again. So.
I mean, people are beating their wives and they're still playing. That's an issue that the NFL is turning a blind to, but they want to make this such a big thing when I think beating a wife, that's just as big as an issue. But you only get 2-game suspension, 4-game suspension. That's ridiculous.
Right. So there's other issues.
Yeah, there's lots of issues, but politics is part of the pie that's sinking the NFL, in my opinion. Okay. So there's lots of pieces.
Why do you think the players are protesting?
I mean, I thought the protests were almost getting done. There wasn't many people doing it anymore. And attention, I mean, Trump made the comments, so a bunch of people want to prove him wrong or prove him wrong, or prove him right. So.
But what were they trying to garner attention for?
I mean, for the injustice. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say there's not some injustice in the world. There's bad cops. But, I mean, America's a pretty awesome place to live, and they're making millions of dollars playing football. So, I mean, they should be happy that they're in the NFL. And if they want to protest, kneeling, I'm all for the Lincoln Arms, showing unity. I mean, I'd probably do the same thing if I was on an NFL team. I have a bunch of friends who are minorities, and they don't know who I really am. And I don't think race should be a factor in the world we live in today, but there's always going to be people with hatred in their heart, and you can't really help that. It's just the world we live in.
Mm-hmm. I guess it struck me how he called NFL players son of a bitch, but he has never really come out to condemn the KKK or the neo-Nazis.
I heard him come out and condemn them numerous times. So I know the first time you didn't call him out by name, but why would you give him? Why do you have to call him out by name? That just gives him more attention. He condemned all violence because violence of anything's bad. Alt right, alt left, it's all violence in the end. Like,
Kyle, Noah's taking a lot of notes, so
I mean,
he has a lot to say.
I feel out of place.
Yeah.
He's got a
No,
notebook
my goodness,
taking notes on.
No, that's okay. I'm not
It's
taking
getting
notes
schooled.
either.
It's getting schooled by Elliot and others that have taught me this. So
I'm not
to be
taking notes
schooled.
either.
Your
Kyle.
political knowledge is way above mine, so
No,
you got the upper
Well, it
hand
doesn't
here.
like political. I mean, and to kind of jump into to like address like political knowledge in this, it's a part of it, but there's a reason why this is so visceral. Like everyone has an opinion. It's because the national anthem and I guess the flag itself and football in the fall, these are all like tried and true American symbols that everyone has been affected by in some way, shape, or form. So it's almost sometimes best like to get the conversation going, which if to like go all the way back to like why did Kaepernick start these protests? And it was to draw attention to the issues of racial inequality, specifically with police brutality in mind that were taking place in the United States and continue to take place in the United States. And I don't think he necessarily intended it to be this massive movement. It came to that simply because there was like a lens on him, one national anthem, and they freaked out. It was actually a game against the Packers in the preseason where it happened. They were out in San Francisco. And I remember like I was working late that night and my phone was going nuts with like all these people freaking out. I'm like, okay, it's a protest. Like, don't get me wrong. I think the protest is important, but at that time, like this part of 2016, I'm not saying we were more innocent as a country, but there was like this whole conception that Trump cannot win we're going to go on as business as usual, which is sweep stuff under the rug. Politics as normal will continue to go on. Then Trump won. And, and I mean, I think the politics of 2016 are a fascinating topic that we could all spend years talking about here. But to keep moving on. So Kaepernick wanted to draw attention to racial injustice that was taking place in the United States. And it's that you pointed out as well, like, it's kind of funny that all these owners are coming out right now and being like, we stand with the players, but you won't hire Colin Kaepernick. It is, the NFL is very slow to change, and I, among others, think they're too slow to change, especially in terms of player safety, in terms of condemning injustice, and they were really slow with the Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson situations. So I completely agree that they are very much we're going to change when the overwhelming, the president put the ball in their court and they had to respond. If not, they would look weak and they would look like they didn't stand with their players, and they can't afford to have that happen. I'm not saying that's all owners, but I'm saying that is certainly a situation that we have to understand. I think, though, when you brought up that, I find it a false equivalency between kneeling or not coming out for the national anthem and, say, domestic violence, sexual assault. I do not believe those are equivalent. I believe that sexual assault and domestic violence and all these other terrible things, and we can go all the way back to the Michael Vick, dogfighting incident too, as I think those are way more condemnable than kneeling or not going out for the national anthem. And I'm not saying that that's how you intended it, but I just for me, that's not necessarily on the same level.
I was just saying the NFL has a lot of black eyes, and it's just
and the CTE discussion is another thing we have to talk about in the future.
Right, and I took it as you were saying there's so many other big issues besides.
I wasn't saying one was worse than the other. They're all just
gotcha. I wasn't sure. I didn't want it to seem like I just want to make sure it wasn't on the same level. No. And so again, it's the attention for racial inequality. So that's kind of.
So that right, and that's how all of this started. Do both of you think that's what the protests were about yesterday?
I said, I think it was more just the stick at the Trump and say you can't tell us what to do type of thing.
A little more of a unity.
This
is
we're a brotherhood. You can't tell us what to do type of thing. So
what do you think, Noah?
I agree for the most part, because I do think I think they were sticking it to Trump, but I think it's more than just a bunch of a union or a group of players or a brotherhood coming together, which was important to do, and they did it extremely effectively. I've I mean, I'll say this: Donald Trump, for all the things I don't appreciate about him, he has a way of bringing people together on opposition to him in a way that hasn't been seen in a very long time. So I agree that there was a show of unity that was very impressive, and it was about brotherhood. I mean, Aaron Rodgers had an Instagram post go out yesterday morning about, brotherhood, unity, love, whatever, that all those hashtags.
Yeah, and
it was
his ticket hunt was about the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I could talk about how much I love Aaron Rodgers and what a tough nut he is to crack all day long, but no one wants to hear that. They'll turn like the fan or whatever they do for that. So,
right. Sticking to politics
Sticking to politics, it's tough for me. But what I do think, it's more than just sticking it to Trump, because what Trump did with that comment, no matter how flippant it might have been, is he challenged an individual's First Amendment rights. And that is not something to be taken lightly. No matter if it's just as a passing comment, man, I wish they'd get that son of a bitch off the field and fire him, get him fired. And the fact is that he doubled down on it, as he does, which is, you talked about him not being able to control Twitter, like his Twitter fingers, or whatever you want to call them. That's a big problem. And he doubled down. If he would have come back and said, I just meant this, it's been frustrating to me, this is why it's frustrating, and done it in a way that was more respectful, but the way it came off was extremely, extremely dangerous, because it sounds like he's trying to mandate nationalism. That's what it sounded like to someone in the ACLU. That's how they're going to look at it. They're going to look at this as someone using their power to say, you have to respect this because I respect it, you must respect it. And if it's just someone on the street saying that, don't get me wrong, that opinion is still, we can talk about it, but they're not the president of the United States, whose words carry a lot of weight. Mm-hmm. And he has to understand that his words mean a lot. And this is again, merely the most recent in a long string of carelessness by him. And you can use international diplomacy, you can use having Russian ambassadors in the White House, you can use all these other, I will call them grave diplomatic missteps, and he has. It's just the latest one, but now everyone's talking about it because it's in the gospel in Green Bay, which is Packer football. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he's very good at getting people talking about things. I'll say that much.
Now, something that came up while I was researching this topic, because I really dove into it, and I wanted to even refresh my knowledge of the national anthem, where it came from, and something that popped up to me right away was that I didn't realize that these en masse showings of patriotism on the field really didn't start until 2009. Up until that point, it was kind of up to each team to decide if they wanted to be on the field. Some chose to be on the field. It was mostly at large games like the Super Bowl, the post 9/11 tribute games. Those were the ones where everyone was on the field. But prior to 2009, that was really a team decision. And some came on and some chose to stay in the locker room and take a knee or have their own team displays of unity in the locker room away from the cameras and the fans. Yep. So it was kind of a push by the Department of Defense to have teams look a little more patriotic. And then come to find out, starting in 2011 through 2014, the Department of Defense paid the NFL $5.4 million to have displays of patriotism, which to me, I thought, oh my gosh, I thought the NFL was doing these videos on I've seen them on the Jumbotron, I've seen the giant flags out on the field. I thought that was all the NFL saying, we're doing this because we're patriotic. And then to find out they were paid to do that, it just didn't sit right for me.
I didn't know that. It doesn't really sit right now.
Yeah. No. So actually it was don't quote me on this, I believe it was 2015, Senators Jeff Flake and John McCain actually created a report about this and called it out, saying this is taxpayer money that's being paid to the NFL for these patriotic displays, and they were calling it paid patriotism.
Yep.
So it's like the flybys too.
I'm not sure if the flybys were part of that, but the National Guard defended it, saying that it was a good recruiting tool So they basically, Bill's over in the peanut gallery going, yep, just.
Well, no, we agree that it's
So that I'm reading it, and I said to my husband, did you know this? And he was like, what?
Yeah. It was not very well published because everyone just looked at it. Again, what we find in American politics, and this is a critique of American politics in general, is if it's not this big flashy thing, we don't pay attention. But this was drawn to attention in 2014-15 by McCain and Flake. Mm-hmm. And, we're trying to get an audit done of the DOD because there's been estimates of anywhere up to $5 trillion in waste in that department over the last 10 years. Like, this is just merely the next part of it. And I mean, this is not me trashing the DOD because, my goodness, that's not what I'm saying. They serve an important role, but you can't just flippantly pay taxpayer dollars. That's a big problem too. But
yeah, I had to dig a little deeper on this because I couldn't believe it. And sometimes I wonder, was it kind of like lost in the presidential campaign and all of that? Because to me, it felt like that was a big deal. And you said that doesn't sit well with you.
Yeah,
you either. And really, I mean, I don't know if there's anything necessarily super wrong with them paying the NFL to recruit, but
NFL has enough money. Like,
maybe it should have been disclosed that that it was paid. But the Packers actually received the single largest payment of $400,000 for a display.
Yeah. So to like kind of get us back, and not that this isn't, again, we could do shows on the DOD and how we spend in like recruiting tools and all that. I think it would be great to kind of, if not to like hijack your show, I'm sorry, but like what's been lost in these protests, like this whole uproar around them is people are misconstruing protesting with disrespect. And I would like to kind of, if I can use a couple minutes just to kind of give like an official statement more on that is, one, I personally don't find this disrespectful. I mean, I'm not saying I come from a pure military family. I don't. But I've had family members who have served. They were drafted or they volunteered. So and to me, the American flag has a great amount of personal significance. And I personally have very strong patriotic feelings when I stand up for the flag. And I have for a long time. But when these protests started, it forced me to reevaluate my position and my understanding because, I mean, you hear a lot of, I think a big thing for Trump supporters, and not to, put words in your mouth is, but there's this sense of beating back the PC culture and beating back like this political correctness and, going back to a time when people could speak their minds. And privilege is a word that I think is a really loaded word, especially for, white people who feel like you're being attacked for being white.
Yeah, I've been saying that for a while.
And that's something when I was younger, like I come from super small town, Wisconsin. Like I come from a hometown of, a high school town of 1,500 and a hometown of 70. So, I'm from super small town, conservative Wisconsin. And when I first got to college and I'd see the AIC or I'd see, these international groups, I'd be like, well, are you, you're being black is what? Like, I didn't understand. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. But as time has gone on and I've gotten to know more people in the community, more people of color, running for office was really big because it put me in touch with activists in those communities. And I went to those communities. I saw what they go through. And it's understanding that as a white male, a straight white male, I have a great amount of privilege just because I'm me. And that might just be we'll call that the floor. But at the end of the day, being a straight black male has more issues based just because of their skin color than I have to deal with. And that's what these protests are all about. It's showing this privilege and making people aware of it. And white people have historically been very uncomfortable with that. We don't like our dirty laundry to come out and be aired so publicly. There was a news article posted in 1964 by the Washington Post during the height of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And I'm going to use the title from then. So when I say Negro, I'm not saying that as a derogatory term, but they said 74% of Americans think that mass protests by Negroes are counterproductive to the civil rights movement. And I mean, that is almost verbatim what I hear a lot of people saying, like, yeah, I agree with it, but this is counterproductive. But we look at the civil rights, and Rosa Parks is like a hero. We look at Martin Luther King as a hero. Some people look at Malcolm X as a terrorist. I view him as a visionary person. I look at all these great members of the Civil Rights Act, like John Lewis from Georgia, and they sacrificed a lot. No one would look at them now and be like, wow, they did the wrong thing. But in the moment, they were viewed as controversial and disrespectful. But they fought for the rights that a lot of minority groups, not just Black, not just Hispanic, not just Latina, not just Native American, they fought for inequalities across all, social and socioeconomic spectrums. And I think that a big part of these protests is showing that we still have a long way to go. And the fact that it's forcing white people to engage in dialogue is important. Now, it's important as white people we don't get so caught up in the flag and the anthem part where we're addressing more of the social and racial inequalities that exist because of it. So,
Kyle, do you have any final thoughts? We have to wrap up, so I want to give you a chance to respond. Have any thoughts or respond to Noah's comments?
He's a very smart man. He knows what he's talking about. I mean, there's not much more I have to say on this subject.
Don't call me smart because I just read things. I'm not smart. So I'm good at regurgitating facts. But I'm kind of curious. Like, how did what I said, did that resonate at all? Was it what I found is again, the internet it's a loaded hand grenade. It can either be used for good, getting rid of it, or you can hold on to it and your hand's gone and you're blown up in your own face because the anonymity that the internet provides is difficult. I'm sure if you and I would have engaged online, this would have had a different tone. But how did what I say make you feel specifically? We joke that this would be a Jerry Springer show. It's not going to get that bad. But how does it make you feel? I'm honestly curious because I come from a progressive, very democratic family. So
I've grown up in a very Republican, very religious family. I'm not religious at all, so that's why I really don't label myself as a Republican, but I went to a very diverse high school. I chose to go there. So, I saw a lot of stuff and how people lived, and it is out there, and we need to help everyone get to the same playing field. And I feel like Donald Trump really wants that, but sometimes his words don't really show it. But if you ever went to a rally, there was people of all ethnicities there. People of all different age groups, and it's just everyone loved each other. And if everyone just actually sat down and had a conversation with someone who you didn't agree with, you'd actually find out you actually agree with a lot more than you would really think. And that's what we all just need to sit down with each other and just talk it out, because we're 100%. Americans. We should just all love each other and
I appreciate your words, because I think so often it's so easy for people to say, oh, all of those Trump supporters, or all of those Hillary supporters, or all of those Bernie supporters. And I think it's important that we sit down and have these face-to-face conversations, because like Noah said, if the three of us had just been engaging on Facebook, this would have been a very different conversation. And it's so easy to hold that screen up and forget that that's a person that you're talking to. So I really appreciate this dialogue. And I appreciate you coming on, especially knowing that, both of us, felt the same way, but I feel like you actually feel very similar to how we do. So that's really great. And I hope people will watch this and see that. So we do have to finish up. I did find a couple quotes that I thought really were interesting, because they were from 2010 from a Bleacher Report. You probably know the Bleacher Report.
I follow them on Twitter,
so this was, it was about 10 different athletes who had made bold political and social statements. And I thought, wow, this is echoing from 10 years ago, from a very different time in our country. He said, protest is protest because it usually stands against a majority. As such, the voices deriding it are often louder than those supporting it. And I thought, wow, that definitely echoes. And then I also saw a lot of people on social media saying, just play football. We don't want our athletes to be political. Just play football. Get politics out of my football. And we did talk about how, football is sacred. Sunday
It's more of a religion than, I went to a Catholic college. I'm not Catholic, but even the Norbertines will agree, like, football kind of beats church on Sunday.
Right.
So
I thought this was it was an article by Ryan Voris, August 10th, 2010. He said, "We would like our athletes to be non-political persons solely devoted to our team's victory on the field. This is selfish thinking. They are fully formed individuals with ideas, hopes, and beliefs. We should allow them to be so, even if it, quote, interferes with the games we have the freedom to enjoy." So I just thought that was really interesting, echoing from 7 years ago in this climate that we're seeing today. So I think we could talk probably for a long time about this, but we do need to wrap up. Thank you both so much for coming. I really appreciated it. So that ends Political Radar Echo, episode 15. Thanks again for coming on. For show notes, go to politicalradarecho.com/15. For more great political content, check out Political Radar Pulse. If you'd like to support the show, you can like us on Facebook, join the Political Radar Echo community group on Facebook, and you can buy shirts and other merchandise at politicalradar.com/shop.
Thanks for watching Political Radar Echo. To ensure that you'll never miss an episode, subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. To check out more episodes of Political Radar Echo, visit politicalradarecho.com or connect with us on Facebook or Twitter.